Hey, I'm Austin Mers. I'm a technical agronomist with Channel here in far southeast Nebraska. Just wanted to do a quick update today of what I'm seeing on some of this early planted corn and soybeans out here in far southeast Nebraska. We've had a lot of ups and downs so far this spring. This field that I'm standing in front of was actually planted April 6th. After this was planted, we had a really nice warm up. We had temps up in the 80s for about a week, and soil temps got up into the mid 60s. Then after that, we've had a lot of ups and downs, probably more downs than ups. Just this last weekend, we actually dipped down to a low of right around 25 to 28, depending on the weather station and where you look at, but obviously cold enough to nip some of this stuff that was up out of the ground. I am seeing some variation in this early planted stuff, obviously, with the slow accumulation of GDUs, and then obviously those temperature swings. We're having soils, depending on the soil type, the amount of residue, soil's either warming up and cooling off faster than the soil right next to it. So seeing quite a bit of variation, which is pretty typical of something we see with that early planting. So that's something a lot of times as agronomists, we kind of push back, say, hey, let's wait for a warmer stretch of weather so we don't get quite as much variation. Not saying that we'll see a major issue with that variation, but obviously, especially with corn, we like to see that come up as uniform as possible. Like this field behind me, we started to see plants emerge last Thursday, so that would have been 5 days ago, and still plants to come up out of the ground today. So definitely not all coming up at once, but obviously our GDU accumulation that I'll show you after a bit here has been really slow as well. So even though there's multiple days in there, not a lot of growth happening in those days. So with that, I'll switch over and show you some examples of what I'm finding out here in the field.
So here are a good array of examples of what I'm finding in this field that was planted April 6th and 7th. This field is currently setting at 180 GDUs, which is considerably more than what we'd expect for normal corn emergence. Like I mentioned, the first ones emerged about Thursday last week. Now we're setting 5 days later with some that aren't emerged. You can see the ones on the left are still below the soil surface, have about a 2-inch upshoot or coleoptile, so not quite emerged. The ones on the right have emerged, and as you can see, as we zoom in here, the tops of these plants were nipped by frost over the weekend when we dipped down into the 20s. This shouldn't really cause much concern. Obviously, maybe set those plants back a little bit. The dead tissue there should kind of pretty well fall off. Obviously, a growth point is down below the soil surface. Might cause a little bit of a tie-up as the first true leaf starts to push out of there, but really shouldn't be much of a concern. But just wanted to show on this early planting with our temperature swings and slow accumulation of GDUs since planting, what we can expect to see, that variation in plant size. These aren't consecutive plants in the same row found in some different areas in the field. Just to show basically the array of what I'm finding from non-emerged to plants that were emerged, like I said, 5 days ago and got nipped by frost.
So here is a chart showing the GDU or growing degree unit accumulation at a location near this field. As you can see, that first week we really had some nice GDU accumulation anywhere from 11.5 all the way up to close to 20. Then once we hit the 15th, we really dropped off to close to no accumulation. Had a few, or about a week in there that we had a few GDUs, a couple decent days, but then we dropped back off. I want to bring your attention to that dashed horizontal line. That is when we should have had emergence at 120 GDUs. You can see that correlates to the 17th of April, but really we didn't have emergence until the 20th on the first emergers, and here we're at the 26th, still finding plants that have not emerged yet. So you can see with that erratic GDU or erratic warmth and cold cycles really stretching out the emergence on this field.
So I also wanted to take some time and show you some beans that were also planted in the April 6th to 7th time frame. Obviously, we had that warm weather, so got those beans going, but obviously weather turned around. Luckily, this is just on a small strip at our Tech Develop site at Beatrice, where we're going to do some dealer training, have some customers go through there as well. So trying to test our beans out, probably do things a little wrong at times to show what can happen in the field. As you can see in this picture, these beans were emerged and exposed to some of that mid to lower 20-degree temperatures over this last weekend, and you can see got nipped by a frost. So with that, I'll switch over and show you what I was finding out in the field. So here's a representative sample of what I was seeing in these strips. You can see there the small seedlings right at the soil surface, the hypocotyl, the cotton lead-ins were right at the soil surface. Our soil temps were right around 40, so we were getting a little bit of radiant heat off the soil, but not enough to keep those plants alive when we dipped down there in the 20s. Those seedlings obviously were exposed to that cold 20-degree weather. You can see the hypocotyl, the cotyledon, both exposed enough that that cold weather got them, completely killed them on that bare soil. Those plants got up and going right away with that warm weather that we had after planting, so got them up out of the ground and exposed to that cold. As we scroll over here to the other side, you can see this is a seedling that I dug up. It is perfectly healthy. It was below some residue, so that ground had stayed cooler through that warm weather, and it was not exposed to that cold, freezing temp, so it was going to be perfectly fine. Okay, wrapping things up here, just want to say I know I've talked to some other people that have been out looking at some soybeans, and they have fields that are completely unaffected by the frost, so make sure to look at your fields. Each field is going to be specific to the conditions that you had right there in that small environment. So with that, thanks for watching. For sure, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or anybody on your local channel team. We'd be more than glad to help. Thanks.